Um,
You're fine. You're fine. It's fine.
okay. Yeah, this is my first time using StreamYard.
Oh, welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome. So if you guys are watching the replay, thank you guys for checking it out. My name is Markia. I'm known on social media as the Money Plug, and I am a certified financial education instructor. And today I have a really special guest. First of all, thank you for being like this was literally so last minute. It was really as a result of a lot of the like questions I was getting when I was talking to people like y'all make sure you guys got wills and stuff because with the death of PNB Rock, he was only 30. It was really scary because he has kids, and that brought up the question of like, how do you make sure that your family is taken care of? How do you make sure that, once you're gone, on top of their grief, your family isn't struggling to settle your affairs? So, introduce yourself to everybody. Tell us what you do.
All right. Thank you so much, girl. I really appreciate this opportunity to be able to come on here and speak. But my name is Tasha Triplett. I'm a licensed financial coach and business coach. I currently live in Houston, Texas. I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee. And so I'm super passionate about just educating, honestly, our people about the importance of having their affairs in order, helping people put together financial game plans so that when the unexpected happens, we can be prepared. And so, yes, like I said, I'm just super excited to be here talking to you today.
All righty. So, first question, this is probably like the number one question I got when I first started talking about it. What is estate planning?
Okay, so estate planning, in short, is really making sure that you have things in place. God forbid something happens to you. You know, from making sure that you have life insurance in place, making sure that you have a will in place, a trust, or anything that allows people to be able to identify. Okay, what did Tasha? I'm gonna use myself. What did Tasha have in place? What is she leaving behind? And who's responsible for taking care of these things. And so that's in short what estate planning is. And so as I'm educating people about that, it's super important for people to understand the importance of having that, no matter how old you are.
So for me, this was like normal talk for me. I'm ex-military. As soon as I turned 17, like as we were in processing, they were like, who do you want your final paycheck to go to? Who's your death gratuity payout and stuff like that. But for people who don't operate in that sphere, how young should you, or how old, I guess, should you be before you start having these conversations?
Um, honestly, I would say 18 is a good age, really before 18. So actually, my background is in education. And so, coming from being a school teacher in Tennessee, a teacher and an instructional coordinator in China, and then a school principal here in Houston, Texas, I realized that in our educational system, we didn't actually start, we don't talk about money enough. We don't talk about these things enough, estate planning, savings, just financial literacy enough. And so, it's super important to make sure that as parents, we're talking to our kids about these things before they start having kids. And so, especially when you get to an age where you actually have assets and people depending on you, such as a family or children, if you're married, it's super important to really understand those things before that. But especially when you have dependents, people that are dependent on you.
So let's say I don't have dependents, right? What does estate planning look like for me if all I have is like aunts and uncles and cousins and sisters and brothers? And do I need to be planning? Like, do I need to do estate planning if I don't have family to leave something behind to?
That is a wonderful question. And people ask me that all the time. And so the key question that I always ask back is, do you eventually plan on having a family? Do you plan on getting married? Do you plan on having any children? And a lot of times maybe people don't plan on it, but if it were to happen, are you in a situation where it could be a potential to happen for you? And so I'm just always thinking about, let's be forward thinkers. So for me, I don't have any children. However, I still have my things in place because I have a house. I have other assets and things that I plan on leaving behind to my nieces and my nephews if something happens to me. And then, of course, when I get married and have children, then I'll just kind of switch my things over to them. But it's super important to have those things in place just for the what ifs. The big thing is creating generational wealth and putting yourself in position to be able to have something that you can leave as a legacy to your family. And so that's what estate planning actually allows you to do, to be able to leave things in place for your family, even before you actually get that family that you're leaving something for.
Okay, so speaking of leaving something behind, I'm pretty sure you see this a lot. I'm from Baltimore. So unfortunately, I've had to bury a lot of my classmates. And one of the recurring themes I'm noticing when this happens is these GoFundMes to raise funds for funerals and making sure that their kids are taken care of. And so, I hear people talk about life insurance, but I think for me, it's one of those automatic things. Like I said, military, we automatically get that 400K and I never have to worry about it again. And now that I'm retired, I still get that benefit. So for people who are, normally don't even think about or don't come across situations where they feel as though, life insurance is important. Why is life insurance important? And who do you talk to get it?
Okay. Oh my goodness, girl. I think now is the time for GoFundMe's. GoFundMe's were a thing before the pandemic, but I think even since the pandemic, I've seen GoFundMe's left and right. And every single time I see a GoFundMe, I always just get so disappointed because, again, this goes back to the financial literacy that we needed to learn when we were in school, the financial literacy that we should have learned if we went to college, just having something in place. And so the first thing I'm going to say is GoFundMe is not life insurance, guys. So it's super important to have something in place outside of a GoFundMe. When I ask my clients this question all the time, if a stranger came up to you and said, hey, you can quit your job and I will pay every single one of your bills forever and ever and ever, would you believe them, or would you still have some sort of income coming in, whether if it's a side hustle or something? 9 times out of 10, you're still going to have some backup income because you never know when things will change. You never know when that stranger's situation will change. Even if they're a millionaire, you just never know. And so that's the way I look at GoFundMe. When a person passes away, that's pretty much you saying, I'm dependent on this person to take care of my family and to pay my bills when I'm gone. We don't know what situation people are in. And with this pandemic, things are crazy. So people's financial situation are changing left and right. And so to go back to your question of life insurance, life insurance is it's really protection. It's income replacement. It is something to make sure that your family can have something in place to make sure that your affairs are in order. Most people think, oh, when I die, I just want you guys to have enough to bury me, or I'm gonna let all my debts just die with me. They're gonna get buried in a casket with me. But unfortunately, that's not true. Your debts don't die with you. They actually go to the next of kin. And so you want to make sure that you have that income replacement, that protection over yourself, so that God forbid something happens to you, all those things are taken care of. You're not leaving the financial burden for your family. We have insurance on our cars in the event that we're going to have a car accident, but it's not guaranteed that we're going to have a car accident. We have insurance on our homes in the event that there's going to be a hurricane, like in Houston, Texas, where we have hurricanes left and right, that something might happen to our house. But the one thing that we know for sure is we have a born date and we have a death date. And so it's super important to make sure that we have life insurance in place outside of the job, because the job can always change, but have life insurance in place because we know we're going to eventually need those things for our family to be able to take care of the things that we leave behind, but then also to be able to leave generational wealth as well. And so that's another way that we can really talk about life insurance as a form of creating generational wealth beyond just us. Even if you don't have children, you can still create generational wealth for everyone that comes behind you.
I love how you harped on having insurance outside of employment. Because for me, I learned the hard way. I was one of those people who joined the military and I was like, I'm gonna do it forever. Like it was nothing else I ever wanted to do with my life. And so when Uncle Sam tapped me on my shoulder and was like, thank you for your service, but we got it from here, it's kind of eye-opening, right? Because then I had to start thinking about health insurance and life insurance and dang, who's gonna do my will now? Like, because everything was through the military. And I really think, thank goodness that I had the witherall to be like, all right, I need to search out this. But if somebody does not know, like, okay, I can go here to have these conversations, or I can go here, where can they go to find information on like life insurance and stuff like that?
So I'm glad that you asked that question. Actually, I'm a licensed financial coach and I'm licensed to be able to put clients with a suitable life insurance program that benefits them. And so I sit down with people from different ages. So I have people from 18 all the way up until close to retirement age. It's super important to make sure that you're talking to someone who's licensed to be able to do that. And I'm just blessed to have that life insurance license to be able to help people. And I don't know if you know it or not, but September is actually Life Insurance Awareness Month. And so now is the time. Let's sit down and talk, y'all, about putting together life insurance programs that will benefit you if you're a single person with no kids, or if you have a family, or if you are a single mom, a single father, whatever your situation might be. But then also, if you're thinking like, I don't even know if my parents have these things. I think we talked about it. I think my uncle, my auntie might have it, but you just really need to think to yourself, do you want to be the one responsible for covering the cost of their expenses if something were to happen to them? Do you guys as a family have enough money that you can collect to put together to cover a cost of a funeral? The average cost of a funeral now is 15 to 20,000. But with inflation being as crazy as it is, we don't know what it's going to be 10, 20, 30 years from now. So we got to make sure that we have a game plan in place, and life insurance is that plan. And of course, I can definitely help you with putting together a suitable program for you and your family.
Listen, if my husband watching this, I feel like LL Cool J off of Kingdom Come. Just bury me in the backyard and tell everybody I left you. Because 15, 20,000 for a
Yes.
funeral?
Yes, girl. So when people do these GoFundMe's, half the time the GoFundMe's is not even for that much. So they still end up having to pay all this money after that. But then half the times people don't even raise that much money when it comes to the GoFundMe. One thing that I think about is George Floyd. And so I remember when George Floyd passed away, and it was a crazy time, of course, for us as African Americans, but us as a country to be able to witness those things. And so, as hard as it was, one thing we were able to see was we were able to see it in person. We were able to see everything happen. So, when his family developed the GoFundMe for them, that definitely put them in a situation to be able to cover his expenses. Of course, the state had to cover some things too, but most people aren't necessarily in that situation. I think, let me look. As I'm looking right now, I always like to look in the moment. George Floyd's family raised over $14 million in a GoFundMe. Over $14 million in a GoFundMe. Now, the thing was, we know why. We know why. It was a publicized thing based on something that was caught on camera. But most of the times when our people pass away, it's not something that's publicized like that. It could be crime that just happened locally. It could be a just natural health that a person might have passed away from. And so when people are setting up regular GoFundMe's, the average GoFundMe is maybe raising $2,000 to $3,000, if that. So the question that you guys have to ask yourself is $2,000 to $3,000 enough to bury my loved one? Do they have enough? Do they have more debt than $2,000 to $3,000? Because remember, we got to cover the debts too. We got to cover the income that people are depending on. We got to cover the mortgage if they stayed in a house. And if they have young children, we got to cover the children's education too. So we got to have enough life insurance in place in order to be able to do just that, to be able to cover those things.
Now, I remember when my mom, in 2014, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she beat it. We're in remission,
Thank
but
God.
we had to have those conversations. And I've heard of other people saying, they have multiple life insurance policies. What is the benefit of having multiple life insurance policies?
Well, so I talk to people and they're in different situations. Sometimes people say, "Oh, I have multiple life insurance policies. This covers this covers that." But the one thing that I always ask people the question of is, do you have enough? Because you might not necessarily need multiple policies if your one policy actually covers all of your expenses. And and so when it comes to that, I always do an exercise for people to actually identify how much do I need. And I kind of touched on that just a while ago. I do something called a dime. So the dime allows people to be able to see, okay, so if I got life insurance, let me see if I even need to talk to this lady, or let me see if I need to see if I need some more. Well, the dime is number one, we want to make sure that all of your debts are taken care of. So your life insurance policy must cover your debts, but it also must cover the death. So that is the burial part. So that's the debts plus, let's say, 20,000 for the death. Then you have your income. So the rule of thumb is to have at least 5 to 10 times your annual salary worth of life insurance coverage, especially if you are depending on someone, or if some, I'm sorry, if someone is depending on your income every single month. Okay. Then the next thing is, if you have a mortgage, again, this is the time, the era of real estate and mortgages and houses, where you want to be able to still have that asset even when you're gone so that you can pass that down to your family. So you want to have enough coverage to cover your mortgage. But then in addition to that, you want to make sure that you have enough coverage to cover your children's education if they decide to go to college, or if they decide to pursue any other post secondary or post elementary education. And so once you add all those numbers up, then that tells you how much coverage you actually need. Then, if you're able to get one policy that covers those things, then that's good. You're all set. If you already have the other policies in place and it equals that, then we can definitely, look at that to be able to make sure you actually have what you think you have. One thing that I found just being in this industry as a financial coach, but then also being licensed to be able to provide my clients with life insurance, I realized that a lot of people don't necessarily have what they think they have. And so that's why I really pride myself on doing free policy reviews. It doesn't matter what company you have your policy with. It doesn't matter. I would like to sit down with people so that they can truly make sure that they have what they think they have in place, because it will be devastating for you to go years saying, "Man, I have this in place," but then when you pass away, it's nowhere to be found because it wasn't exactly what we thought.
Okay, somebody had a really good question. Is there a limit on how many policies someone can have?
Okay, that is a great question. So, there is not a limit, but in some cases, if you're the owner of multiple policies, then it depends on the company that you are going through. So if we're looking at a specific company, they might say, okay, she can't be the owner of multiple policies if it's just for you. Now, it might be a situation where your parents had a policy on you and you want a policy on yourself, then that is a situation that you can do. But I would say the short answer of that is it really depends. And so you want to make sure that if you don't own a policy of your own, though, if it's something that your parents had on you back when you were a kid, you definitely want to make sure that you do your due diligence and get something on yourself and make sure that you're the owner of that actual policy. Now, the beneficiaries are the people that you put in place for if something were to happen to you. They're supposed to take over the financial aspect of things. You can have different beneficiaries on your policies, but you want to make sure that you're the owner because you're the one that can make adjustments to your policy if you want to increase it, if you want to do different things with it.
Now, one of the more popular cases I think that really brought conversations about estate planning to the forefront was Chadwick Boseman. And he was diagnosed with a terminal illness, but he still passed without a will. And his estate ended up in probate. What does that mean? And like, how do we avoid stuff like this from happening?
Okay, so when we're thinking about probate, that's pretty much when a person doesn't necessarily have a will in place. So the I always say that the life insurance is the program. The will and the trust, those are the things that gives people the instructions of what to do. Oftentimes people feel like if I have my life insurance in place and I have a beneficiary, then that's all that I need. Well, no. When you're someone, in his particular situation, he had a lot of assets, he had a lot of things. So although his family or his wife was the beneficiary of his policy, what about all of the things, all of the assets that came from the movies and the home and all the other things that he has? So when it comes to probate, probate is pretty much where it's the legal aspect of things. You have to go to court and they have to make a decision on, okay, so where are these things going? Where is this money going? Where are these assets going? And that normally takes a while. That stuff can be held up uh, for quite a long time, especially if there are no written instructions. Unfortunately, when we're dead and gone, we can't speak up and say, Tasha is supposed to have this. Tasha is supposed to take care of this. No. And so when you actually have, when you don't have the written instructions in place, you do have to go through probate and deal with those things. And like I said, that can be a lengthy process. And so that's why it's important when we're going back to estate planning. That's why it's important to have your affairs in order. Even under 30, having your affairs in order so that you have the written instructions of what everything or where everything is supposed to go, no matter how small you think it is. Just making sure that you have instructions for your family.
So we keep talking about it, but like, what is a will? Like, can I
Oh,
just, because like, in the movies, they'll write it on a napkin or, something like that. Like, what is a will?
okay, great, great, great. So a will is the written instructions of where you want things to go. And I always say that it's very important to have that will because, like I mentioned before, if you have life insurance, let's say you have $500,000 worth of coverage, and let's say that you're my beneficiary, and that's all I've told you. But let's say I also have two children to go along with it. Well, if I didn't give you the written instructions of what you're supposed to do with the money, although you're my best friend, you're my good friend, you're my mom, you're my sister, whoever, I'm trusting you to do the right thing. The will allows us to be able to say, hey, this is where this needs to go specifically after you get the money, even for the things, the house, all these things, the wills and trusts, they are very important when it comes to that because it makes it very clear for everyone, and it's the legal and binding document. It's the legal and binding document stating that you can't just go run off on the plug, like they say. You can't go run off with the money. We actually have the written document there. That's our binding agreement.
So, speaking of beneficiaries versus what's in the wills, and I've seen this myself as somebody with kids. I've included my children as beneficiaries of my policies. Now, if you have kids who are young, under 18, should you have an adult on there as well? Like how, if you want the money to go to your kids for sure, but they're young, they're under 18, they're not going to be 18 no time soon. How do you ensure that your kids get the money?
I love this question. My clients ask me this all the time because oftentimes people are firstly thinking about, man, I'm just trying to take care of my kids. I just need to leave something for my kids. And number one, that is the right train of thought. You want to have something for your kids. But if your kids are under the age of 18, they will not be able to receive the life insurance proceeds. So if you have a company that's saying, oh, you can put your 1-year-old baby as the beneficiary, uh-uh, No, because that money will be held up until the child turns 18. That's the part that they don't talk about. And so you want to make sure that you have someone that you trust, that you know, love, and trust in place. So if you do have young children, the person that's over the age of 18 is responsible enough to make sure that your children are still taken care of, even if something were to happen to you. And so that's why, again, especially if you're someone with young children, or you're someone with, if you plan on having children, these are all things that really work out. If you're married or even if you're single, start having these conversations with your friends now or with your families now. Like, hey, if something were to happen to me, I want you to take care of, I want you to be in the place to take care of my children. I'm gonna tell you a little story about me specifically. So I was actually raised by my grandparents. My father passed away when I was 3, and my sister was in my mom's stomach. And my mom passed away when I was 6, and my sister was 3. And so my mother actually had a will in place because she was sick. So she already had the will in place. She had the life insurance. She had everything in place. And she gave the written instructions to my grandparents. She didn't know when she was going to leave, but she wanted to make sure that, God forbid, something were to happen to her, which obviously it did, but that we will be taken care of. And now, looking back on it, I'm just so thankful that my mom had a plan in place. I'm so thankful because there's no telling where my sister and I would have been if she did not have that written out plan, if she didn't have life insurance in place, if my dad didn't have things in place for us. And so that's when we were younger, at the age of 3 and 6. And so now, thinking about years later, it's a blessing that we were actually able to benefit from our parents being responsible when they were.
And you know what? And I 1,000% agree with that. Like I said, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer, and it was crazy because I'm not even the oldest. I'm the second oldest. So I have somebody. I'm 29 now, but I have a sister who's 2 years older than me. And when we were, having this conversation with my mom, I think I was 18. Nobody wants to lose their mom that young, but she started having these conversations. My sister was like, la la la, I don't want to hear it. Nothing's gonna happen to you. And I get a lot of people, even adults who are in their 20s, 30s, and they're like, well, I plan on living a long life. Like, why should I even be bothered with this? Like, what do you say to those people? Because like I don't want to make it seem like I'm wishing something on them, but how do I get people to understand like this is an important conversation you need to have? I understand it's morbid and nobody wants to think of it, but you're doing your family a disservice because then on top of the grief that they're trying to navigate, they also got to navigate your finances.
Yes, and oh my goodness. You know, when I think about millennials, when I think about millennials, we I don't think we want to think about the unexpected. Or actually the generation after us, even more so than us. And so with the times that we live in, if you ever thought, if you ever thought that you were, Superman, now is the time to realize that, unfortunately, with the pandemic, so many people, young people, older people, middle-aged people, passing away left and right, and they were not prepared. I had people close to me that passed away as well, even prior to the pandemic. And so I think that, the most important part is, now is the time to just get our affairs in order and be okay with talking about it. As hard as it is to have the conversation, it's extremely important to know that if I talk about it now and get my money right now and put a plan in place now, although if I'm dead and gone, my family is going to be devastated. They're going to be heartbroken, but the financial burden will no longer be on them. But if I decide to procrastinate, if I say this is not for me, I'm still living my best life. Like I'm nothing is gonna happen to me, then that's when we get, in a situation where it's unfortunate for our family. Another story about me. So I told you that I lived in China. I lived in Beijing, China. And so while I was in China, I was there for 3 years. And so when I was 27 years old, living in China, perfectly healthy, I was working on a dance for church, and it was for Easter that year. And so I was working on a dance one day. The next day, I woke up and my whole right side was literally on fire. My leg, foot, ankle, leg was on fire. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe I sprained my ankle. So I literally went to about 5 different westernized hospitals over in China. I'm thinking, okay, Chinese medicine, American medicine, Western medicine, like somebody has to figure this out. Well, literally nobody could tell me what was going on. I went from limping to crutches to one point I was in a wheelchair, and then I ended up having to wear a boot. So I went to all these doctors in China. They could not tell me what was going on. But then I ended up a couple of months later, still in pain. I had to fly back to America for my cousin's graduation. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to the doctor and I'm going to get this thing checked out. You know, I'm back in America. I was in Memphis at the time. I'm going to get this thing checked out. So I flew 15 hours in an airplane. Friday, I arrived in America. Saturday, I was at the graduation. Tuesday, I was at the doctor. And when I got to the doctor's office, the doctor said, okay, Miss Triplett, we've done an x-ray and you don't have an ankle sprain, but something else is wrong. Your right leg is substantially larger than your left leg. I think that we need to do an ultrasound on your leg. They did the ultrasound and they found a blood clot. They found a blood clot in my leg. 27 years old, perfectly healthy. So I thought. And so the first thing the doctor said to me when he looked at me, he said, Miss Triplett, you are lucky to be alive. You have traveled 15 hours on that plane, and that blood clot could have gone straight from your leg to your heart or to your lungs, and it would have instantly killed you. Now, at that time, I did not have life insurance in place. My brother-in-law, my sister had been talking to me about getting life insurance. I felt like I was like, oh, I'm good. I work out. I'm healthy. You know, I'm in shape. But no, I could have died right then at that moment when I stepped foot on that plane. And so I tell that story because all of us need to make sure that we have a plan in place. And the crazy thing was, Markia, once I found out that I had the blood clot, what did I do? I called my brother-in-law and said, hey, I need the life insurance. And when he tried to help me with the life insurance, they declined me. They
Because of the blood
declined
clot.
because of the blood clot, because they said you're no longer insurable. They felt like I was gonna die. So I
Mm.
had to wait for about 6 months until the blood clot was gone. I had to get on the whole little routine process thing. And then once they finally approved me, it was higher than most people my age. So again, 27 years old, having to pay much higher than people my age, all because I thought that I knew everything. You know, I thought that I was gonna be good, and I felt like, oh man, I can wait. I'll get it done. But that was the cost of me waiting. And sometimes people don't live to tell the story. And so I'm so grateful that I'm allowed to be able to tell that story because I want to encourage young people. I mean, not just people under 30, but people over 30. You know, we want to make sure that we have things in place. But if you're anywhere between 18 and 70 and you don't have life insurance in place, you need it. You need it. We need to talk. Because we definitely don't want you to end up something to happen to you and then it end up being a financial burden on you and your family.
Somebody had a question. I know you're not an attorney,
Okay.
but they had a question about the difference between a living will and a last will and testament. Like, what's the difference? Can we have one without having the other? Do we need both? Like what do you suggest?
Well, because I'm not an attorney, I will say, you know, when it comes to specifics, I think that everybody's situation is catered to their particular situation. I would advise them to get with a will and probate attorney just so that they can actually do a consultation with them to see what they specifically need. I think that it depends on the specific person, and I don't want to misspeak based on where a person is, but I definitely think that having a will in place, period, is extremely important. It's extremely important, especially if you have assets and things to leave behind. So, money, real estate, those types of things that you actually want to pass down from one person to the next. Those are the times when you want to make sure that you have that will in place.
And does your wife or husband have to be the beneficiary? And then I have a supplemental question to that.
Okay, okay, okay.
With me having kids, right? Let's say I have two policies. One goes to my husband, one goes to my kids. Even though you told me not to do it, I just did not listen. And I put my kids on it. And let's say I don't have a will. Then what happens?
Okay, so I'm gonna ask the first. I'm gonna answer the first question first. So, if you're married, does your husband or wife have to be the beneficiary? Actually, no. It's up to you. You're the person that's in control of your money. Essentially, when you're getting life insurance on yourself, it's your money. Remember that you are getting life insurance as income replacement. And so if your husband or wife actually, if they depend on your income in some capacity, I would say, yeah, you should make them a beneficiary. But if you have a sister or a mother, or someone that you want to put in place, you can do that. The other thing is, for some of my clients, they have multiple beneficiaries. So they might have their husband or wife as one beneficiary, but they do add their mom. They do add a sibling. We can add as many that you want, and then you can allocate the percentage that you want people to have. So if you want, okay, I want my husband to have 70%, and then I want mom to have 20%, I want my sister to have 10%, you can do that. And so you have options when it comes to the beneficiaries. So that's the first question. And then the next question is, okay, so you have a policy and your husband is the beneficiary, and then your young children is the other beneficiary in the other policy. If your children are under the age of 18 and they're the only ones on the policy, unfortunately, nobody can touch that money. So the only policy that we can actually look at is the one where your husband, who's obviously over the age of 18, is the beneficiary. So again, folks, if you have a life insurance policy and your children under the age of 18 are the beneficiaries, please hit me up so I can help you take care of that. Or hit up your licensed financial professional so that they can help you take care of that. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that your kids or your family who depend on your income every single day, they actually are able to get that income if something happens to you. It's nothing like having to, a kid is 13 years old in the middle of middle school, high school. Well, I guess that's middle school age. They're in middle school, 13 years old. They're in sports. They're doing all these things. They're dependent on this income, but they were the only beneficiary on your policy. So now baby has to wait for 5 years before he can even see any money. And so you want to make sure that you have these things in place, because it's nothing like holding up money that actually belongs to the people that you allocated the funds to. It's been held up. And so that's why we got to make sure that we're properly educated about these things.
Speaking of properly educated, I've been seeing a lot of videos, the buzzwords, and everybody come about, put your money in a trust, put your money in a trust, put your money in a trust. What is a trust? Is it a bank account? Because in my head, that's what it looked like.
Okay. So when it comes to a trust, the trust is uh, similar to a will. When you it's similar to a will. So it's like where you have the money going. Because again, people might have their money in many different places. So I would say the will is like the instructions. The trust could be where you're putting the money in, and again, you want to have a place where your beneficiary is able to access that money. This I have a client that literally was saying, hey, I really got to get my trust set up because I have this money coming in from all these different places. So it just allowed you to be able to allocate those funds of where the things are supposed to be going.
Can you have more than one like you do with life insurance?
As far as the
A
will and the trust,
trust.
yeah, you can have the will and a trust.
Okay. Now, somebody asked, is there a way to set up a trust for my business to go directly to my kids and my grandkids, even if I got married?
Okay, so yes, so there is a way to set up a trust so that it can go to your kids. Again, I have people ask about that as well. And so what I normally do specifically when it comes to the separation of funds and things with a trust, I send them over to my legal team so that they can actually help them with allocating the funds of where that money is supposed to go. But oftentimes people do set up trust and things for their kids and family members as well.
Okay. Okay. Oh my God, I'm learning so much. I'm learning so much. Okay. So when it comes to like, for example, let's say I feel like I have nothing to leave behind. Cause like I saw a TikTok, and I ain't gonna lie, I laughed at it. I'm not even gonna lie, I laughed at it because she was like, what am I leaving behind? My hopes and dreams? Like, like she didn't necessarily have like physical assets to pass down. Like, would you still suggest a will? And then like what am I gonna put it in if I don't have nothing to pass down?
Right, right, right. Um, Whenever I'm doing a consultation with someone and I realize they might be single with no kids, they don't have a house, they don't have a lot of actual tangible assets, I normally tell them we want to keep a will in mind, but we're going to wait on that for now. So it's one of those things where just one kind of still allocating everything that you have, writing down the things that you do have that you want to pass down, no matter what it is, how small or how big, having those things in place. But if a person doesn't necessarily have a lot of things or actually have anything, like you said, then I think that having the life insurance with the proper beneficiary in place is something that's a good start. That's a good start. Now, eventually, you do want to have set up the will, just so that you can have those instructions to go along with the money and all of that when you have your children and all these things. But yeah, if you're a person and you don't have anything, again, it's a case by case basis. So we really just look at that based on the consultation of the client and their actual expected things that they want to have in place.
Okay, and what does a consultation look like? Let's say I sign up, the money plug, won't talk to you, and I want life insurance, and I need a will, and all this stuff. So, what does a consultation typically look like?
Okay. So first of all, a consultation is free. It's not too many free things these days, but I pride myself on giving my clients a free consultation. And so in the areas that I focus on whenever I'm doing a consultation, one, I talk to my clients about building a financial house. I think that's extremely important when it comes to making sure that your money is right, when it comes to making sure that your estate is right. We got to build a full financial house. And so we look at where you are from a savings aspect. So we're looking at retirement. We're looking at anything that you have as far as investments in place and things like that. Then from there, we're looking at your emergency fund, to see, like, again, what do you have in place outside of your long term savings. Then we look at, if you have young children, do you have anything saved up for the children? So again, this just gives me an opportunity to kind of see, all right, from a savings standpoint, where is the client? How can I actually support them in this area? The next thing that we look at is we look at your debts, because your debts are an extremely important part when it comes to any financial program, whether if it's saving, whether if it's life insurance, whether if it's people can't save because they have a lot of debt. When people pass away, they have to pay off those debts. So we look at your debts, we identify where you are from a debt standpoint, and we put together a comprehensive debt program. Then after that, the third part of the consultation is, what do you have as far as the protection standpoint? And when I say protection, I'm talking about life insurance outside of the job, um, auto and home insurance, because I mean, my thing is I'm trying to save you money. So I'm looking at those areas. We're looking at wills or trusts if you have those things in place. And then, so after I gather that information from you, then I'll give you my recommendations based on how I can enhance where you are. Honestly, most people have a lot of great things in place. The main thing is they don't necessarily have a professional that they can sit down with that can walk them through the process of how to properly allocate their funds. And so that is what I do when I sit down with the client. The consultation probably takes maybe about 25, 30 minutes for me to gather the information. And then, like I said, I just work on the program two in hands. We're partners. And so I think when it comes to talking about money, it's like the taboo thing. We don't want to talk about money. It's like, oh, wait a minute. My business, my savings, my debt, my protection. I don't know. Well, I feel like, I was put on this earth. I was put here to be able to allow people to be comfortable with having the money conversation, to be comfortable with talking about where they are, because once you know better, you do better. And once you're able to identify, we're able to identify those things together, then we're able to put you in a suitable program.
I love that. And then you keep talking about how like when people pass away, your debt does not disappear. Post COVID, the majority of my clients who would come and we do what's considered financial audits. We go over all their finances and we talk about everything from your spending plan to your credit. And I got a lot of widows
Mm.
who their spouse passed away or their parent passed away. And now they have these properties that was in the other party's names. There was no will in place. Now they got to go through this long, arduous process of getting everything switched over. They got to have estate sales to pay off debts. Any loans that they might have co-signed with a person for, or joint accounts. Now the other party is responsible. Like a lot of people think, oh, when I die, that debt gonna die too, or that debt gonna disappear. But your estate is responsible for that, and you're essentially taking money out of their mouths when you're leaving behind all of that debt. Please, 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 if you get nothing else from this live, I really need you guys to understand the importance of having your affairs in order at all times. Like you need to at the very least have a debt plan for, okay, and and it's so funny because I see it all the time in the movies. They be like, oh, I want this money to go here. I want this money to go here. And you get nothing. Like you get a t-shirt or something like that. And it's funny, but that's exactly what a will do. If you have a will and it's a legally recognized will, whatever you say goes. Even though you're not there, your wishes will be honored. And I really need you guys to understand that you don't got to be 50 and 60 and 70 having these conversations. You don't. We need to start having these conversations at 20. Look, PNB Rock was 30, y'all. 30. And he's gone. Chadwick Boseman was in his 40s and he was gone. No will, no nothing. Man. Oh, somebody on TikTok said, is a trust better to have than a will when you own all of your properties? But from what you were explaining, these sound like you need both, right?
Yeah, like I said, it depends on the person. When I do my consultation, I gather if a person has that or not, and I transfer them over to my legal team, then they actually do their version of their consultation to see, is the will or trust better for the individual. So I think that, again, I don't want to overstep in that area, but I definitely say, if you have assets, you want to make sure that you have the written information saying where these things are supposed to go to. You want to have a program in place or something in place saying that if I have my children, if I have my spouse, they are supposed to receive XYZ, whether if it's funds from a money standpoint or my tangible things, whether if it's my properties. And so just having those things in place will save your family a headache, because again, you're dead and gone. And so you might not necessarily have those things in place. And so I want to, well, there was something else that I was going to say, but I'm going to let you go to the next thing, because there was something that I thought about as I was talking.
My literal next question was going to be, all right, so let's say I got all this stuff. What do I do with the documents? Like, because everybody I know putting it under their mattress, I don't think that's a good idea. Please stop doing that, y'all. Please stop damn doing that. But like, where do you put these documents to make sure that like they're in a safe place?
That is a great question. I have clients that one of my clients, he puts his things in a lockbox at his bank. And of course his spouse knows that information. I have clients who have a lockbox at their house. The main thing is, no matter where you put it, tell your family where it's located. Because when you're dead and gone, we don't, just like you said, we don't want people to be looking up under a mattress trying to figure out what a life insurance policy is or where the will is. Make sure that we start having those conversations now. We're about to get together as families for the holidays. Let's make it a norm to make sure that we're all on the same page here. If something were to happen to me, my sister and my brother-in-law, they know exactly where the things are. I actually, I made sure to have my sister on my bank accounts just in case something happens so she can access those things. Most people don't know that you can do that. So just, of course, you want to have a trusted person when it comes to that.
No, yeah,
uh,
for real.
but, just having a backup person in place that knows where these things are. And sometimes, you want to make sure that you have at least two people, because what if something happens to you and that person together, like you and your spouse together? You want to make sure that your parent or your grandparent or someone that you know, love, and trust outside of your spouse, that they actually know what these things are too, because we want to make sure that we have these things in place, which kind of goes to what I was about to say. When I'm talking to people about building their financial house and we're just becoming financially sound, something that I push is the importance of starting with the foundation. When it comes to real estate, we want to build houses and we want to have this beautiful house, but the house doesn't become that beautiful house unless the foundation is right. And so by foundation, I talk about life insurance being the foundation. And the reason why is because although I can help my clients with, of course, life insurance, savings, getting out of debt, preparing for retirement, all those things, those are all important. But if a person passes away tomorrow, the life insurance is the thing that's going to be the money to pay your family. Our debt, our savings, our retirement programs, these are long-term programs that we got to work to actually put in place. But we got to make sure that we have our life insurance in place, because that is for the now. That is for the now. That is for the tomorrow. That is for a week from now or a month from now. Because we just never know how things are. So just really, really make sure that you guys have those things in place, and the will to go along with it, and the trust, if that fits within your realm as well. Make sure that you have those things in place, because it's so sad how other cultures, they're born into generational wealth because grandma, grandpa, great grandma, they left those things. They had those things in order. But for oftentimes for the African American community, we don't talk about it enough. We don't have it in place enough. And so now is our time to change that narrative. Now is our time to be able to put things in place so that we don't have to fall into those categories. We can be better than what our parents and grandparents were. I'm calling out all millennials. I'm calling y'all out. Like, it's our opportunity to now, let's get it together so we can teach our kids and our future kids so that they can actually have these things in place too, so that we don't have to continue to travel down the same vicious cycle.
I cannot thank you enough. Like, y'all, when I tell y'all this was so last minute, I literally text yesterday, like, please tell me somebody in here knows something about estate planning, because I was not necessarily a fan of PNB Rock, but to me, it was just so shocking. That man was eating breakfast and now he gone and he left behind children. And so now, on top of navigating their grief, his estate has to figure out, what are we going to do for these kids? And it's just like, I can't imagine, losing someone so close to me. And now I'm trying to keep it together long enough to figure out, all right, how are we going to split this up? Who gets this? What we doing with that? And so I really, I'm real big on normalizing these conversations surrounding finances. But I realized that I was doing my followers a disservice because I never discussed estate planning. And it's no, like, if you have your financial house in order, your estate planning is the foundation. You cannot
Yep.
build a house without that, because it's not going to make a difference. All that progress you thought you made, once you're gone, is gone. That's it.
Yep.
Oh, now, what's the best way to get in contact with you again? Tell us again. I'm gonna make sure I put it back up on the screen, you guys.
Okay, so well, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm super passionate about just all of this money, finance, making sure that we're good. And I think that just really comes from the fact of my parents having something in place, my grandma knowing that, what, I got to have these mutual funds in place for the girls, and, all these things, but then being an educator and seeing that we're missing this mark with our kids. And then in college, if you're not a finance major, you don't get the privileges of learning these things. You learn it on the back end when you're like, dang, I got these bills that I got to pay, or I got this situation, somebody passed away and we need to go fund me, or, I don't have a will. We normally learn about these things when it comes to the experiences that we experience for ourselves, or that our family has experienced, or somebody that we are close to experience. And so I'm super passionate about making sure that we're knowledgeable about these things. And so if you want to get in contact with me, I'm going to tell you my telephone number. You can shoot me a text and tell me where you heard me from, say from the Money Plug. But my telephone number is 901 825 8650. 901 You can shoot me an email at financebeyondthebooks@gmail.com, so that we can schedule your free consultation. Again, that's financebeyondthebooks@gmail.com. I also have a Calendly link for my scheduling page. If you want to follow me on IG, my Calendly link is on there in my link tree link. My IG is at Tasha Triplett, 1P 2T's _. So at Tasha Triplett _ on Instagram.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Because even I learned something. So this was definitely dope. If you guys missed the live, I know TikTok don't allow you guys to go back and watch it, but this was actually streaming live on my YouTube channel. If you look up at the top, you'll see up at the top, it says WWTMPD, What Would the Money Plug Do? That's the name of the YouTube channel. You can go and catch the replay. And I just cannot thank you enough. I'm definitely gonna make a post for you guys on Instagram with her and tag her so you guys can catch it. But just thank you so much for all of the information, because you definitely, at the very least, you definitely gave us something to start talking about with our families. Like you said, it's the holidays. We're all coming together anyway. Why not all come together and get on the same page financially? If you truly want to create that generational wealth, first, you have to break the generational curse that was preventing your family from having that wealth in the first place. And that now is the time to do it. So thank you so much. Oh, you just don't know.
Thank you. Thank you. And, I appreciate all that you're doing, just bringing awareness to our community, to our people, to people in general is extremely important. So I just want to commend you for that. We definitely need this. And thank you so much for being the Money Plug. We definitely need these things. We got to continue to talk about them. And we definitely need people like us that's pouring into the community. And so thank you so much for the opportunity.
No problem. But y'all, everybody else, have a good night. Stick around. I'm going to end this. But everybody else, have a good night. And if you guys have any questions, please, her information will scroll in at the bottom of the screen. It's going to still be there when you go to YouTube. Make sure you guys reach out. Go to the source, because I'm going to tell you now, I ain't going to do nothing but send you straight to her. So don't ask me. Go straight to her. But everybody else, you guys have a good night. Y'all know what I always say. Live every day like it's your last, but pay your bills and wear condoms just in case it's not.